back to the days when I worked with the Commonwealth Secretary in the Commonwealth Youth Program. For a little over 3 years, was the youth spokesperson for the Commonwealth Youth Program globally. I think at that time we may have had 52 Commonwealth countries. We've grown since then. And so it's certainly an honor to be here. Several of the things the Prime Minister mentioned that we certainly entirely support. One of the areas of concern, certainly in the Bahamas, is the importance of spatial planning in the marine space. Obviously, in big ocean states like the Bahamas, 100,000 square miles, the oceans are used by Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of the Environment, Ministry for Marine Resources, Ministry of Transport. And obviously there's a huge need to have careful spatial planning on how that particular asset is used. And so it's really good to hear that you will be partnering with the government of the Bahamas to provide resources. We have several critical areas that you have already touched on. One is the restoration of coral. We are now facing a very serious threat in the Bahamas, where we have the stony coral tissue disease that's negatively affecting the Bahamas, which has implications for losing the barrier needed to reduce the impact of waves on the Bahamas. And the truth is, it is in large measure global travel, that is, whether it is container ships or cruise ships, that contributed to this disease. It affects more than 50% of the variety of corals that we have. And I know the Prime Minister and his team is working on this issue and would need every possible support in finding resources to both mitigate against that kind of disease, but also to impact the global discussions around international travel through Bahamian waters. How do we get those who are largely responsible for this damage to pay their fair share? And the other item that several of you mentioned that I believe the Prime Minister will be very grateful for your support on is the whole issue of valuation. So while we are engaged in valuation of the seagrass, there are multiple marine resources. We have many aspects of our biodiversity that we need to evaluate. And the reality is it's an expensive proposition to put value on those natural resources, even before we get to the point of monetizing those resources. So that would be a wonderful partnership with the Bahamas to help monetize all dimensions of our natural resources, which then ultimately goes into the sovereign fund. And then finally, I'd like to say that apart from looking at the big ticket items, like for example, the establishment of barriers, berms, and a number of countries have examples of how they seek to protect their shorelines. I live in Grand Bahama, and as the Prime Minister mentioned, I was in my home. We lost our home in Dorian. My wife, daughter, and child lived through Dorian. And there is a need, as alluded to by the Prime Minister, for major barriers to be established around some small island states in strategic locations. Obviously, there isn't enough resources to do it for an archipelago that extends from the coast of Florida to the coast of Cuba. But there are opportunities for putting in place the berms, but that's the big ticket item. The small ticket item, to go to the point made by the chair of the Romanian Bank, is that if we can help fund small investments in climate-smart agriculture, climate-smart construction, and so in each national economy, each part of the Bahamian economy, you look at climate-smart approaches to those particular areas: agriculture, marine resources, construction, etc. What you then have is, apart from the big-ticket items, you have the small items helping individual citizens prepare for what is an eventuality, and that is climate disaster.